Të dashur shikues, në serinë e intervistave gjatë organizimit të Forumit të Vjenës, Forumit Ekonomik të Vjenës, kemi musafir zotërin ambasador Viktor Jakovich, që është president i bordit mbikëqyrës do të thotë të Forumit. Ne me të do të diskutojmë për tema të ndryshme, ka një eksperiencë të gjatë në regionin e Ballkanit, por do të flasemi për Forumin dhe për pozitën e tij në këtë forum. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So you've been more than 3 decades you served in U.S. administration.
Yes.
And you were the first ambassador of United States in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Correct.
You've seen the worst of this region when we had conflicts and everything, but now everywhere you go around you see development. What is your opinion about Balkans in 2023?
In 2023, well, there have been a lot of forward movement. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of development. You're quite right. Many years ago in the 1990s, things deteriorated. And we had warfare, we had atrocities, we had genocide. We had a lot of big problems that were finally able to be resolved, or at least for a period of time to be resolved. And now we're entering a period where we can have more development, and there can be a normalization, a stabilization of relations, stabilization of life, a normalization of life, so that people can look forward to taking place in the European mainstream and in Euro-Atlantic institutions like the European Union, like NATO, like other organizations. And you're already an integral part of Europe. You don't need to prove anything about being Europeans. You are Europeans. But belonging to the institutions, joining the institutions of the European Union and NATO and other places, this has got to be the objective for the near future for Kosovo, in my opinion, and for other countries in the region.
So, what do you think that European integration at the moment is off the table? It's a long distance objective. NATO, most of the countries have become part of the NATO, except Kosovo, because of still some of the countries have to recognize Kosovo within the NATO alliance. What do you think are the main challenges of the Balkan countries today?
Well, the main challenge is probably, I would say, democracy and achieving real democracy within the states that exist. Also, nationalism. On the part of some countries, there is still the problem of nationalism. Many of my Western colleagues talk about corruption, but I look at corruption as being something that exists in a lot of places. It exists around the world. Does it exist in the Balkans? Of course. Is it a major problem? Perhaps. But these other problems are more important and need to be resolved. That's the way I look at the Balkans. But, you know, you're talking about the European integration process. I think you're hinting at this at least and making reference to it. It was quite vigorous in the past, as we know, in the 1990s and the early 2000s. You know, in the beginning, 1972, let's say, there were 6 countries in the European Union and 15 countries in NATO. And today we have 29 countries, if I'm correct, in the European Union and 30 in NATO. So there's been this great expansion, this great enlargement of both the European Union and NATO. Now, it reached a pause around, I would say, 2008, let's say, and then we had a series of crises. We had the financial crisis of 2008. We had the migration crisis for Western Europe of 2015. We had the twin crises, I would call them, in 2016 of Brexit and the election of President Trump, because President Trump was very anti-EU, if you recall, and very anti-European. So that was a crisis also. And then finally COVID. COVID was also part of the crisis. But during this period of time, there was...
and when we all thought that with the COVID we are done, then we had the Russia attack Ukraine.
Well, and you have that now too. But during this whole period of time, it really gave the Europeans an opportunity to reassess where they are. If you go back and look at some of the comments by President Macron from France, then you see back in 2019, right up to the current time, in April, he made a very important speech in the Netherlands about European security policy, European industrialization policy, things of this nature. He and many others, not only he, are very interested in making sure that there is cohesion in the European Union before there is further enlargement. Mm-hmm. But you're quite right. Now we're faced with another issue, and that is the Russian second invasion of Ukraine in 2022. But you know, I look at this in a different way. I look at this and I say, this makes the enlargement of EU and NATO into the Balkans more urgent. It means that we should not look at this as just another issue. It's something we should do. And over these past years, we also, not only was it a period of reassessment, but I think it was a period of complacency. We believed that there was a forward march of EU membership, NATO membership, people want to join. Brexit was a shock because
no one expected that.
Brexit meant that somebody doesn't want to stay in the EU. And there are NATO countries that have come in, and there are discussions in those NATO countries about what to do about the future. So we're in a situation not only of reassessment, but ironically, we're now facing urgency. You know, it's kind of like when I'm lecturing at universities, that I tell people, it's kind of like when you're a student and you're told you have 2 months to write a paper. And for the first several weeks, you don't do anything because you have 2 months. You're complacent. You don't do anything. And then suddenly you realize the library is closed. The library is closed. It's under construction. Your internet is down. Maybe you catch the flu or something. And then all of a sudden at the last minute you say, oh my goodness, I could have done this earlier. The EU and NATO could have enlarged earlier, but they did not. And now they're facing a big crisis with this urgency in Ukraine. Quite correct.
In February 2023, you were elected as the president of Vienna Economic Forum.
That's correct.
First non-Austrian to hold this position.
Yes, that's correct.
What is your connection with the Vienna Economic Forum?
Oh, the Vienna Economic Forum I've worked with for many, many, many years, going back almost to its beginning when I was still in the U.S. government or I was fresh out of the U.S. government. And I always collaborated with them and cooperated with them. I was a member of the board for a long time. When I was installed earlier this year as the president, and you're quite right, I was the first non-Austrian president in the organization's history. I even joked at the installation, I said, you know, when my grandparents left this part of the world and came to the United States, there was no Yugoslavia. There were none of the republics that have emerged since that time as states, as republics. There was Austro-Hungary. So when my grandparents came to the United States in the early 1900s, they're registered as Austrians. So in a way I told them, this means that there's
heritage.
Continuity. There's continuity of the Austrian leadership of the Vienna Economic Forum.
In your speech you said that you've been to Kosovo during 60s. Now we are in 2023, Kosovo is an independent state and it has many challenges. It moved forward in terms of establishing rule of law and functional democracy, but there is a way forward to go.
Yeah.
What is your impression about Kosovo now that you came back after almost 50 years? Actually, 60 years almost.
Well, 60 years ago was when I first came here in the 1960s. But in the meantime, I've been coming back from time to time into Kosovo to see what's going on, to conduct some business, to talk with friends, and to find out what the developments are here in Kosovo. Well, I have a very strong opinion about Kosovo and a very positive opinion about it. I think, first of all, you have a welcoming environment, if we talk about it from the standpoint of the Vienna Economic Forum and economic issues, then I would say that you have a very welcoming environment here in Kosovo for foreigners to come here. They are welcomed here. There is stability of your marketplace. I would say macroeconomically you have a very stable situation. I think there are specific opportunities that foreign businesses can look at, which is one of the reasons we brought IT people, transportation solutions people, all kinds of people that can look at those opportunities and those potentials that are here. And you have them. You have them in the timber industry, textile, automotive, minerals. There's a host of opportunities here. And we wanted to familiarize them with what those opportunities are. You also have better infrastructure than you had in the past. The roads, the railways, this is no comparison to when I was here in the 1960s. Things are very different. The most important difference, of course, is that you are an independent state. You were a strong, vigorous, sovereign, independent state. At that time, you were far from that.
You were in Bosnia not until the final Dayton Agreement was achieved, but you've seen that afterwards there was establishment of Federation and Republika Srpska, and now many people say that Bosnia is a dysfunctional state and it's very hard to agree on something and everything. Now Kosovo is in similar dilemma. There is a huge pressure on our government to establish association of Serbian municipalities. What is your opinion on that issue?
I will be very blunt. I think it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea politically. It's a bad idea for attracting foreign investment. In Bosnia, I was there when the Republika Srpska was first formed and when it was codified into the Dayton Accords, the peace accords on Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the old days, if we look 25, 27 years ago, at the beginning of it, it was simply an administrative division, nothing more. It was an integral part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, an administrative division. Now, after 25 years of existence, it has developed its institutions, it has strengthened itself to the point where the leadership of this Republika Srpska is threatening to secede from Bosnia, is saying that they can be an independent state, separate from Bosnia. This is very dangerous.
So it's a similar situation in Kosovo?
I would not predict that that would happen with the Association of Serbian Municipalities in Kosovo. I would not predict that. But the similarities are inescapable. The similarities are inescapable. It is a mistake of Western diplomacy, I'm sorry to say, because these are my colleagues in Washington. But I must say it is a mistake on the part of Washington. It is a mistake on the part of Brussels to insist that you do this in Kosovo. And if you do this, you will do this because of them and not because of yourselves. The experience in Bosnia is clear. Bosnia is a dysfunctional state with a lack of consensus. The American policy in Croatia was very similar in the 1990s. It failed, it did not succeed. But the American policy was to divide the country between Serbian and Croatian enclaves, geographically, territorially. It never happened. Why? Because the Croatians decided to resolve the issue militarily. So that problem never developed in Croatia. The problem for investment is this. Investors look for a unified regime. They look for not a fragmented environment, as we were talking about today. They look for a unified environment. This is why in Bosnia and Herzegovina there's foreign direct investment, but there could be a lot more in Bosnia
than there are now.
If it were not for the fact that there are two regimes. There are two regulatory regimes, two regulatory frameworks that the outside investor has to deal with.
Bureaucratic burden for businesses.
And at a statewide level, the Bosnia-wide level, if they want to take reforms, make reforms in the commercial regimes with the regulatory regimes, there's very little consensus, which means it moves very slowly, or it is blocked and doesn't move at all. Again, I'm not predicting this for Kosovo, and I hope that doesn't happen. But that is the danger. You have investors who come in and say, I want an environment that I can understand, that is easy to understand.
Less bureaucracy.
Direct, unified, the same rules for every part of the country. That's what the investor is looking for. You're already fragmented after the dissolution of Yugoslavia.
Yes, yes, we agree
People
on that.
People come here and they say, I have to do business in 6 different countries or 7 different countries. It's a very different situation from what it used to be.
Now, you are in the private sector once you left the administration. Would you invest in Kosovo?
I would advise other people to invest. I have nothing to invest. My company doesn't make anything. We simply give advice. My advice to people would be what I said about Kosovo, the stable environment, the fact that you have a very developed infrastructure, the fact that your regulatory regime is very inviting for outsiders. You have a 10% flat tax, I think, on corporations, for example.
And dividend tax is 0, so.
Yeah, things like that. And also you have a very youthful population that is very educated, especially when it comes to computer technology and IT awareness, ability to use computers, foreign languages. So yes, I would definitely advise people to come to Kosovo.
Well, Mr. Ambassador, it was a pleasure talking to you. And hopefully next time we will come with more investors and we will organize something similar like Vienna Economic Talks. And I wish you a great presidency of the forum.
Well, thank you very much. We consider that Kosovo is a very important key player in the Vienna Economic Forum. You're one of 13 states that is a member state of the Vienna Economic Forum. And as I said, we regard it as a special mission vis-a-vis Kosovo in order to help you on the path to Euro-Atlantic integration. I thank you.
Të dashur shikues, kjo është intervista me ambasadorin zotëri Viktor Jakovich. Ne do ta bëjmë një shkputje të shkurtër publicitare dhe kthehemi pas pak.